Brody Schaffer, do we have a profile on your channel about one Brody Schaffer?
Not yet. So I'm going to be ripping off profiles basically as soon as the men's season comes to an end. So assuming that is this week, we're going to start ripping off profiles. We got a couple of transfer portal videos that I've been teasing for weeks now, and I know some people I've heard some people say, "Why aren't we getting videos on these things?" This is just, as you know, heats up with basketball this time of year, but we got all off season, so we're going to be talking a lot of these guys, including Brody Schaffer, who he'd been trending Iowa for a while, but his recruitment has picked up, and he's got good size. Wisconsin kid that Wisconsin did recruit. I don't know that they ever officially gave him an offer, but he had offers from Jimmy. I believe it was Jimmy. What's his face from? Is it Rogers from Wazoo?
Yes,
I can't think of his last name. Rogers. Yeah, you should know of all people. And then Northwestern offered him as well. And so yeah, he's one of the few receivers that Lester has actually recruited and landed from the high school ranks. That's what we forget. Yeah, they landed guys out of the portal, and Jacob Gill and a kid from Chattanooga this year, but they have not had as many guys out of, this is what, his second or third receiver that was actually fully his. And it'll be exciting to see what he does. And receivers always have the opportunity to play early. He had a bunch of really good Ivy League offers, which I know fans are going to kind of chuckle at that, but obviously proves he's a pretty smart kid to be getting offers from the likes of Cornell. Lindenwood's a very good institution, not Ivy League, but very good institution. Hey, Texas State's been a great offensive program in recent years, Mark. Not that that means anything, but Yale, how about that? How about a Yale offer? North Dakota State, a couple of the best FCS programs. So I know the first inclination with a kid like this, when you look at, well, he's only got a Wazoo offer. They're no longer Power 4, and then Northwestern is Northwestern. So why should we be excited? It's sort of, you're kind of in a holding pattern because we don't yet know what Tim Lester is going to be able to accomplish with wide receivers at Iowa. But his track record does speak for itself. You can't call it apples to apples to what happened with the Bryan era, where they were getting lowly recruits that never panned out because they weren't worth it, or they just didn't get developed here. We don't ever question Phil Parker when he gets 2 to 3 star DBs. So we'll see. Let's see what happens with Tim. This is going to be a big gauge year, and certainly a big gauge spring with some of these young receivers, with Lester having been here about a year. Bud Meyer's only been on the job as a receivers coach for about a year as well. And now, of course, you get the new analyst in, who we talked about him last week, has quite the resume to be a unpaid analyst on staff. So all of this will be interesting to see how it pans out. But congratulations to Schaffer, and we'll get a profile on him and a bunch of other kids here in the coming days over on my channel.
So we have some stats here, courtesy Max Preps. So he was playing quarterback this past year.
Well, you know more about him than I do, then.
I am double checking on this. It's the same. It's the proper hometown out of Winnacone, Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm assuming everybody was recruiting him as a receiver. I know I don't think he broke the top 100 nationally for, let me see what 247 Sports has him as the 126th best receiver in the class. And, but I mean, listen, this is the 26th class. There's plenty of time for Lester to identify and pursue the kids he wants. So this isn't, we saw some last ditch efforts under the previous administration, if you will, previous staff, offensive staff. So I'm a little, again, more patient when I see a guy like this who maybe he's flying under the radar, but whose recruiting has picked up of late. But without studying his tape, I can't give a great feel for what I expect out of him. But the passing, I mean, his passing, go back up to his passing numbers, Mark.
Well, I was going to say he was a receiver the previous year. So look at 23-24, 34 catches, 11 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns, played some varsity ball as a freshman, scored 2 touchdowns as a receiver. So primarily a receiver in 10 games played. the previous season, because there's virtually no rushing and 0 passing numbers the previous year, but last year he became the starting quarterback, apparently.
Really
He
good
threw,
numbers too.
yeah.
Threw for 71%.
71%, 18 touchdowns. I can't find the interceptions because it's just not helping me out on that end of the deal. But
he also ran. Look at that. He ran
look at
for
that.
1,700 over almost 1,800 yards
And
that's
31 touchdowns.
Yeah, so obviously he can move. Obviously he's going to come in as a receiver. Last time Iowa recruited a quarterback to play receiver would have been Alex Moda, but he hasn't seen the field yet. James Reeser, I know, switched to receiver, but he came in initially as a quarterback. But again, those two guys were Brian guys. So Marvin McNutt's an excellent example of a former quarterback turned receiver. And a lot of these kids are great athletes. They can play multiple positions. They do play multiple positions on both sides of the ball throughout high school. So I don't know what I have not looked up his track times. I can try to find his track times.
Could we possibly be questioning the level of play?
Right. Yeah, always. That's what, that's funny that's gotten brought up a number of times over the years with Coach Patterson. And, he's not on the recruiting trail. He's not looking, combing through film. He doesn't have access to the film. I mean, looking at huddle tape does not make you an expert on some kids' abilities. But that's always one of the first questions he asks is, what's the level of football? He had and I would never repeat who it was, but he had a coach. He had a well-known coach tell him one time, I believe it was either at a coach's clinic or on his staff. He shared this before. He said, in front of someone else, in front of other people, he might have, I think it was at some event because he spoke in front of a crowd. And this guy said, I can look at you can look at a kid's tape for about a minute and know if he's a high major prospect or not. And after the event was over, Don took him aside and he said, you can't say that to people. You cannot say that to people because that's quantifiably false. And that's not true. You cannot look at somebody for a minute. And so it is more of a science than maybe some people think it is. Even coaches, I mean, I don't know, it'd be interesting to poll coaches on a number of different subjects, but that'd be one that would be interesting. What qualifies a kid to be offered a scholarship? Wouldn't that be kind of a cool study to do if you could poll all the Power 4 head coaches and just say, because some programs are handing out scholarship offers like there's no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some that really hold back and are a lot more picky. Iowa was one of those schools. But obviously there's some schools that value character more than others, I think, and background, etc. But I'm looking at Brody Schaffer's. I'm not seeing numbers from him. Let's see here. It's always interesting when you're trying to find 100-meter times because obviously some kids aren't running the 100-meter in high school, and I am not seeing his. I think I looked this up when he initially committed last week. I'm not seeing any numbers for him. So that's the other thing that Coach Patterson always brings up is, there's some kids that are on scholarship at Iowa, have been on scholarship that didn't run track in high school. And he says that's always a concern of his right away. It doesn't mean you discount a kid, but I'll give you a perfect example. Seth Anderson was not a track and field guy. He was a wrestler. Now, his dad was a really good receiver. In fact, he has the single game receiving record for the NFL when he played for the Rams. But, and his brother played high major football at Utah, and I think has played professionally in the NFL. But, that would be a concern of his. So, yeah, those are two things. If you're looking at a kid that it commits, and you can see Schaefer's got a pretty good frame. He's considered 6'1". I'm sure there's an understanding that's unique to him, having played quarterback in high school, that he'll be able to utilize at the next level. But see, like watching this 13-second clip, that might be fascinating to fans, but does it tell you and I anything other than that he has the ability to go up and catch a football? Like, I don't think this route isn't like some crisp thing of beauty, like, but it also doesn't tell me he's not going to be cut out. Like,
yeah,
I'm guessing Lester is more of the Don Patterson. He's cut from the Don Patterson cloth, that it is a science and it takes time to develop that relationship. And there he is with John Budmeyer in that picture you just passed. But again, I would have to think Tim is super involved with all receivers and who gets offered. It's not like if I'm guessing, I don't know this, but I'm assuming Seth Wallace is given pretty good, like, yeah, they recruit different areas, but I'm guessing Seth Wallace is, you're playing flag football out here and there's no line.
This Jonas Williams is a top flight quarterback prospect.
Is that who's throwing it to him here?
Yeah.
Well,
he can catch the ball. The ball is wide open.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what does this show? What does this tell me? The fact that
it's video.
Yeah, no, I know you're looking at Twitter. But yeah, I what were we talking about? Oh, it's not like if Phil Parker probably gives not penultimate control, but close to it to Seth Wallace when he's recruiting linebackers. Even though Phil's been in the business forever, I think Seth has earned that. John Budmeyer has not earned that, with all due respect to a nice guy, John Budmeyer. He's not earned it yet. So Tim Lester knows more about receivers than John Budmeyer. And I'm sure Lester knows that he knows more about receivers than Budmeyer. And my hope is that Budmeyer knows that Lester knows more about receivers than he knows. So, it just is what it is. And frankly, the guy who they brought in as an analyst probably knows more about receivers than John Budmeyer knows about receivers. And who knows, maybe he's coming in to help more so Budmeyer. Hey, Budmeyer came in as an analyst to help Brian Ferentz at quarterback. Now, it didn't work, but that's the position he was coming in to help him with. Lester don't need help at quarterback. He's a former quarterback. So if there's anybody on the staff that might need some assistance, personnel-wise, it's John Budmeyer, with all due respect to John Budmeyer. So this is a fascinating situation. Like I say, I'll be fascinated to see what this team looks like here in a month at the open spring practice. And obviously, we don't know who all is going to be available and ready. You hope the guys like Seth Anderson is, they're good to go. And I think we're gonna talk quarterback today. Man, it's just, without seeing Gronowski out there, it's just like, I don't know what we learned from spring. I guess we learn who the other guy is, right? And then it comes down to that guy versus not this. There can't still be movement between now and the end of August, but is there any chance Hank Brown is better than Brendan Sullivan? Jackson Stratton, he's still here. Is he going to be so buried that he enters the portal again? Those are storylines, but we're not going to learn who the starter is at the end of spring. Some places will. Some places it will be basically the decision will be made, and guys will literally enter the portal looking for new homes. Now, I don't know to what extent, Mark, you probably have a better feel for that than I do, to what extent quarterbacks up and leave after spring ball. I know it happens, but if they're going to do it, this is their last chance ahead of the season. It's also hard to go somewhere else after spring ball and then, somewhere big and gain traction, gain leverage heading into summer conditioning and then fall.
Yeah, most of the portal movement post spring, the last couple of years, or ever since the portal became a thing, had to do with depth pieces. Guys that were just not able to upgrade their position on the depth chart where they weren't happy. They thought they could go somewhere else and get some playing time, but we're not talking about frontline star players transferring after spring practice. But with the way money's being circulated, if that does start to loosen up a little bit, that's going to be the cause. It's not going to be because they don't like where they are, or they're not getting playing time.
By the way, I just found numbers for Brody Schaffer, track and field numbers for Brody Schaffer, 2023 Winnacone numbers. He ran, good news for people who are concerned about it. He runs the 100 meter, or has run the 100 meter up until, I guess, this past year. I don't see anything for 24. So 2023 numbers, 100 meter time outdoor numbers, 12.22, 12, 12.23, 12.1, 12.37, personal best of 12.83. Not seeing anything about wind, but those are probably not, those aren't anything amazing, right? I think if for a receiver, if you're, at a high, again, I'm not a scout or, a recruiter, but I would think you'd want to see, for the faster receivers, low 11s, 100 meter time.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't, he's not going to probably be here. He's not coming in as a speedster. I think we can agree on that. So there's other criteria involved. They do have guys I think that they like. Now, again, he's coming in 26. He won't be here this year anyways, but they do have guys on this roster who I think have the potential. We talked to receiver, I think we talked about receivers last week, the week before, that can take the top off the defense. We've seen Jacob Gill take the top off the defense. Now, he's not the fastest guy on earth, but we saw him at UCLA make a big play down the field. And had they had more consistent, non-injury riddled quarterback play last year, maybe he would have been able to take a few of those to the house. I think Seth Anderson has underrated speed, hasn't been able to stay healthy. Who else did we talk about last time we were talking about receivers? Kid from Chattanooga. Why is his name escaping my mind? We just talked about him. Anyways, the receiver, 5'9" speedster from Chattanooga, whose name escapes me. Sam Phillips. That's one I can't think of that. Sam Phillips. He's another one who, probably doesn't have all world speed, but has probably better speed than most in the room. So I would say fastest receivers that I would guess would probably be Sam Phillips, Seth Anderson, Caden Weegan. Caden Weegan's got to be at the top. Can he be a factor on the offensive side? That's the question. We know what he can bring on special teams. So they probably don't need, they got young, besides Caden, who's going to be gone after 25, they have some younger speedsters. Sam Phillips, I think, is going to be gone as well. He's got this 1 year left, but Seth Anderson does he have one more year? No, I think he's done too. So yeah, Alex Moda is supposed to have good speed, supposedly. They're actually losing more at receiver this year than I would have thought. And that may not be a bad thing because they're just going to keep hitting the portal every year. But like the guys that I would perceive to be at the top of the room should be strong this year because of the fact that they have Gill back, senior. They have Weegan back, senior. They brought in Phillips this year, senior. And they bring Seth Anderson back, senior. I mean, that's four guys that you could argue their top receivers are in those four guys. Now, maybe Vanderzee works in there as a sophomore again, but they got a lot of experience in that room, even if it's not been all at Iowa.